Northern Michigan in November? Man, it just feels like the world forgot to finish painting the picture. Everything is gray, wet, and smells like forgotten pine needles. The kind of place where people keep their blinds drawn even in the daytime. We pulled the baby into this forgotten little town called Iron Ridge. Yeah, I know, subtle. This whole thing started like every other stupid job. A pile of missing persons reports that the local sheriff blamed on a cranky bear, or maybe a drifter who forgot his meds. But when the reports started detailing perfect surgical removal of the vital organs and no signs of forced entry, just claw marks on the inside of the walls, I knew we weren't dealing with Yogi. Sammy and I rolled in, got the worst motel room this side of Oklahoma, and started doing the rounds. The first kill site was where I got my first hint that this gig was going to suck harder than a Hoover convention. Usually, you find a kill, you find the hair, maybe some tracks. A werewolf leaves a mess, but it's a standard mess. This time, there was almost nothing. Just residual heat, a faint ozone smell, and the sick feeling you get when you realize something fundamentally wrong has walked through your life. We found the creature eventually. Not under the full moon, not even close. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gloomy, just a miserable drizzle. It was hitting a local liquor store. Real sophisticated, this thing. I pulled up, gave Sammy the look, the one that says, "Don't mess this up, jerk," and went in, 12 gauge loaded with our finest specially blessed silver rounds. I saw the thing mid-shift. It was big. Bigger than a standard shifter, maybe 8 feet of muscle and rage, covered in coarse gray fur that looked like wet steel wool. Its eyes were amber embers. I didn't hesitate. I pumped 3 rounds, quick succession, right into the chest cavity.
That's when the script flipped. Silver is supposed to burn them, halt them, make them scream like someone put them on a hot grill. This thing? It barely flinched. The rounds hit, they flattened, and they clattered to the cheap linoleum floor like dimes. There was no smoke, no sizzle, just a ripple in its hide. It looked down at the mess I made, looked back at me, and honestly, the expression was almost bored. I remember thinking, well, damn, silver bullets didn't work this time. I ducked behind an aisle of cheap whiskey as the creature roared, a sound that vibrated the fillings in my teeth, and swiped at the shelf, sending glass and spirits flying everywhere. I grabbed a backup steak, old school, purified iron, and bought myself 10 seconds before retreating back to the baby. "Get in, Sammy!" I shouted, slamming the door. The sound of the engine firing up, that reliable rumble of the baby, was the only thing holding my sanity together right then. "What happened? You hit it! I heard the shots!" Sammy yelled, already frantically typing on his laptop, trying to find the missing variable. "I hit it, Sammy. It didn't care. It looked at the silver like I just threw confetti at its chest. We are dealing with something ancient, something that bypassed the rule book. We need to find the why." That's when Sammy went full scholar mode. While I drove us 30 miles out to the next greasy diner for coffee strong enough to strip paint and questionable hash browns, Sammy was diving into the truly occult archives. He was tracing the local legends, cross-referencing indigenous lore with old European witch texts brought over by the early settlers in the Upper Peninsula. He was quiet for hours, just the click-clack of the keyboard and the rumble of the engine, classic rock on the radio, Zeppelin, loud enough to drown out the existential dread. Finally, while I was wrestling with a subpar Reuben sandwich, he slammed the laptop shut. "I got it, Dean. It's not just a werewolf. It's a lichen bloodline protected by a warding ritual from the late 17th century. I wiped mustard off my chin. Warding ritual? Like a magic shield?
Worse, they were a specific group that settled here, deep in the mining country. They weren't turning through infection, they were born into the change, but they sought out a way to circumvent the natural weakness to silver. They found a secret society of witches who specialized in body augmentation rituals. The spell isn't based on lunar cycles or simple infection. It's bound to their bloodline and reinforced by a specific material found only in this region, a combination of certain mineral deposits and blessed human bone ash. So they're basically wearing magical Kevlar? I grumbled, pushing the plate away. Great. So what kills magical Kevlar? The spell is powerful but complicated, Sammy explained, pushing his glasses up his nose. It draws its power from the ground itself, specifically the iron ore deposits deep beneath Iron Ridge. The silver resistance is a byproduct of that infusion, but the witches left a failsafe, a paradox. Lay it on me, Egghead. The spell grants resistance to purified silver because silver is considered the cleansing element, but the original ritual was performed using raw iron, specifically mined in the winter months and treated with a very particular, highly toxic acid found in the area's wetlands. They used the iron to anchor the spell, believing it made them stronger and part of the land. Okay, so what, we stab it with a rusty screwdriver? No, Dean. We use the anchor against the spell. The only way to break the warding and thus kill the creature is to introduce purified, specially prepared iron at the moment of transformation while the creature is actively drawing power from the earth. Sammy pointed at the map. There's an old, abandoned smelting furnace just outside of town. It's sitting right on top of the largest ore vein. I looked at the map, then back at my brother. His eyes were wide with that intense, focused panic that meant he knew exactly how suicidal this plan was. So we have to fight an 8-foot bulletproof dog monster in the basement of an old furnace, time it to the moment it's sucking juice from the earth, and then stab it with a custom-made iron toothpick. Sounds like a party. Get us some raw iron, Sammy. I'm thinking we forge a couple of nasty knives. And bring the rock salt. Can't hurt. We spent the rest of the night prepping. We couldn't go to a blacksmith, obviously, so we used the portable forge we kept in the trunk. The smell of burning coal and hammering metal was a familiar comfort in the chaos. We took 2 pieces of raw, cold-mined iron Sammy had managed to score from an antique shop, thank God for tourists who buy historical junk, and hammered them into twin, ugly, serrated blades. I coated the edges in rock salt and smeared them with the specific wetland acid Sammy identified, praying the combination would disrupt the occult anchor. The Impala pulled up to the smelting furnace just after midnight. It was a massive, desolate structure, rust staining the concrete like old blood. The wind howled through the broken windows, and the whole place felt heavy, suffocated by decades of secrets. "You feel that?" I whispered, loading my shotgun with flares. Silver might be useless, but light and fire still cause confusion. "The resonance," Sammy murmured, clutching his customized iron knife. "It's strong here. It's definitely feeding."
We moved slowly through the derelict facility. The air grew colder, thick with the smell of wet metal and decay. The only sound was the crunch of our boots on concrete and the faint thrumming from the deeper levels, the creature's pulse, or maybe the Earth's magic being drained. We descended into the sub-level furnace room. It was huge, dark, and filled with industrial shadows. In the center, there was a massive, still-glowing pit, the old primary smelter, sitting directly over the main ore vein. And there, standing guard, was the creature. It had reverted slightly, standing on 2 legs, but still massive, its fur matted and dripping. It wasn't fully transformed yet, but it was getting there. It was communing with the pit, its body convulsing as it absorbed the ancient, secret energy that made it invincible to standard hunters' measures. It noticed us immediately. Its amber eyes narrowed, focusing on me. I saw recognition, maybe even irritation that I hadn't stayed dead. "Showtime, jerk," I muttered. I fired the flares. The sudden, blinding burst of sulfurous light exploded against the concrete walls. The beast recoiled, giving us the window we needed. "Go! Get to the pit!" I yelled, drawing the iron knives. Sammy sprinted toward the glowing smelter pit, intending to disrupt the flow of energy. The creature, realizing its power source was threatened, let out a piercing shriek.
Not just an animal cry, but a sound laced with something occult, something meant to shatter your mind. It launched itself at Sammy. I intercepted. Full speed, I tackled the creature just as it reached the edge of the pit. We slammed into the cold, damp floor. This thing was pure muscle and protected bone. I felt ribs crack just from the impact. I couldn't use the knives yet. The transformation wasn't complete enough, and I needed to ensure the connection to the ore was active. Right now, it was still too shielded. I resorted to brute force, smashing the butt of my shotgun against its snout. It barely bothered it, but it paused the attack. It grabbed my wrist, its claws sinking uselessly into the thick leather of my jacket, but the pressure was unbelievable. It lifted me clean off the ground, intending to snap me in half. "Sammy, now!" I choked out. Sammy, meanwhile, was at the pit. He wasn't stabbing the creature, he was stabbing the ground. He drove his iron knife deep into the concrete floor, right at the epicenter of the glowing vein. The moment the customized iron pierced the ground, the room shuddered. The glowing in the pit flared blindingly white, and the creature's protection field stuttered. I felt the immense pressure on my arm momentarily ease. That was my opening. The monster dropped me, convulsing, its protective skin shimmering and cracking like dry clay. It turned its attention back to Sammy, who was pulling the knife free, trying to get away from the electrical feedback shooting through the concrete. "You want iron, you monster? Here's your iron," I roared. I lunged forward, ignoring the screaming pain in my ribs, driving my knife, coated in the acidic salt and ancient purpose, right into the softer tissue beneath its ribcage. I plunged the second knife deep into its neck, targeting the area where the witch's binding spell had been anchored centuries ago.
The reaction wasn't just death, it was disintegration. The creature didn't bleed, it didn't even fall. It simply began to crumble, starting from the wound sites. Its dense, protective fur dissolved into ash, and the massive bulk of its body shrunk and withered, collapsing inward until all that remained was a pile of gray dust and the two iron blades sticking out of the floor. The sound of the collapse was swallowed by the silence. The fight was over. The silence that followed was heavier than the creature ever was. I pulled the knives out, wiping the residue on my jeans, the smell of ozone and burnt salt filling my lungs. I walked over to Sammy, who was leaning against a pillar, breathing hard, his face pale beneath the grime. "You okay, jerk?" I asked, though my voice was rough. "Just another Tuesday," he managed, trying for a smile that didn't quite land. "That was close, Dean. Too close. Silver really did nothing." "Yeah, well, we'll stick to iron for the old school stuff from now on. We gotta remember, every secret society has a secret weakness." We spent the next hour cleaning up the mess, making sure the dust was swept into the furnace pit and burned to nothingness, erasing the physical evidence that something non-human had ever existed here. We walked out of that furnace room just before dawn, the first hint of weak sunlight trying to break through the Michigan clouds. We got back in the Impala. I popped a cassette into the tape deck, AC/DC. Time to drown out the internal monologue. "Where to now, Dean?" Sammy asked, already dozing off against the window. I put the baby in gear, the engine catching with its familiar roar, a sound I wouldn't trade for anything. It's the sound of escape, the sound of movement, the sound of leaving the secrets behind. "South, Sammy. Find me a diner that knows how to make a decent pancake, and then we drive until we can't smell the iron ore anymore." I looked in the rearview mirror as the sun finally crested the trees, hitting the dusty asphalt behind us. Another monster neutralized, another town saved, and no one would ever know. That's the life, isn't it? Driving down an endless road, carrying burdens that would crush normal men, knowing that sometimes the simplest tool, like a custom knife and a little occult know-how, is the only thing that stands between the world and the things that the silver bullets simply can't touch. We'll keep driving. We always do. Maybe next time the monster will stick to the script, but I doubt it.
This life is always full of surprises, and it never gets easy. Not for us. Not for the men who live in the secret spaces. Just the road, the music, and the next dark thing waiting for us around the bend. The road stretched out ahead, endless and unforgiving, and the baby devoured the miles.